Hi there. In the last video, I showed you how to configure Ableton for your audio interface as well as set up some basic folders for where we'll be storing our project files as well as our audio data. I do like to keep them kind of separate for a few different reasons. Um, so now we're looking at a blank session here in Ableton. I've got a couple MIDI tracks by default, some other things. First thing I want to do is clean up what we're looking at here. So we'll only need 2 audio tracks, so I can click here where it says 1 MIDI, press my backspace or delete key, and I can do the same thing there. So now I have 1 audio and 2 audio, and we also don't need our sends. So I'm going to click on that, press delete, and then do the same there. So we've cleaned up a little bit, which is helpful. Next, I'm going to set our outputs. So where it says I/O here, I'll click on that, and now I can actually see our our input-output paths for these. And input doesn't really matter because we're not using it. We're not recording any audio. So I'm going to go set both of these to no input. Just in the weird case that you accidentally click the wrong thing at some point and your interface is set to God knows what. You don't want that piping through your front of house. So no input, that's a good space to set it to. And then, so this is going to be our click track on the left. So I'm going to click here where it says 1 audio and press Apple R, or I think I can control click and then go rename. I'm going to call that click. And then same thing over here. I'm going to control click and go rename and call that track or backing or whatever makes sense to you. So now we're also going to set the output for our click track to our third output, which is here, output audio to external out. External out, and then change this from 1 and 2 to channel 3. We can leave master here. In fact, I highly recommend for your backing tracks, just leave that set to master and leave your master out 1 and 2. There are some reasons later on that we'll get into why to do that. All right, we're pretty close. The tempo for this song is actually going to be 128, but let's leave it at 120 for the moment so that I can bring in my click track. So if I go down here to Finder, and I have in Music, in Ableton Tracks, JK countoff plus click, I'm going to grab the one that's 120. We're going to be doing Just Dance, which is at 128, I believe. We'll find out. But let's use the 120 because that's what's kind of closest to it. So I'm going to click and drag that into the first cell here in click. Ableton's going to load it up. It actually does a pretty decent job of kind of warping and stretching, and it really, in this case, doesn't have to because it's just straight quarter notes. But it's there. If I were to press play, hopefully,
1, 2,
you'll hear that.
1, 2, ready, play.
And it's going to go back
1,
around to
2,
to the
1,
count
2,
off here.
ready,
So we'll
play.
stop. Not to fear, we're going to set that up. There's a whole science to this. So first thing I do want to do in setting up, and this we're kind of setting up a template here. I'm going to go where it says preserve. Down here, I'm going to change this to quarters. That means that if we change the tempo, it's going to largely leave everything alone. It's not going to try and do weird time stretching stuff. It'll just leave quarter notes kind of as they are. All right, so far so good. Now I would like to, we need to set up our session the way it's going to be. And I'm going to do that in two parts. So this first video is largely getting the click track to do what it's supposed to do. So let's do that first. And we've got it imported. The next thing I want to do is actually wipe out all of our other scenes. They call these the master scenes. So I'm going to click, and then I'm shift click and delete. You'll see why in a second. Let's double click back here again. So this first scene is going to be our count off, and that's going to be the 2 bars that happens before the band launches into the downbeat of the song. And the reason I like 2 bars, my boss calls that a pump count rather than a straight count, which is just 1, 2, 3, 4, is that 2-bar count allows the drummer to get his bearings for 1 bar, and then he can count the rest of the band who presumably don't have in-ears, or they're not maybe listening to the click track. So he can actually count them off, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then everybody will hit the downbeat of the song. And if you do it right, it doesn't even look like there's a click track rolling. So for that to work, we need to take this, because I've got the count off and the click here kind of as one file. I need to split it up. So our count off is going to be the first 2 bars. That's 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. And we're going to make that our count off, and then the click is going to be the second half of that file. So easiest way to do that is make sure loop is on, make sure this is set to position 1, and with a length of 2. Now this is weird because we're not going to loop the count off. If I press play, that's exactly what's going to happen right now. But this is a good habit to start getting into with Ableton for a number of reasons. Also, it looks like my cowbell there is, it's actually fine. Okay, just wanted to make sure that it wasn't bleeding too far over to the left and getting chopped off. All right. Now here's the super secret in Ableton. This little L button here, the launch box, not the lunchbox, the launch box. It has this thing called follow action, which some people call auto follow. I call it auto advance, and it's really cool because I can say in 2 bars. So I'll click and press 2, enter. I want it to go down to the next clip. So when I press play, it's going to continue on and advance into the next clip. All right. Now we haven't loaded our song yet. That's okay. We'll get there. But now let's go and duplicate this scene. So I'll click on it, and I can control click. I can go edit, duplicate. Command D will do the same thing. And here we want to set this to be just our straight click track, and I'm just going to do 1 bar of that. So what I do to do that, and that was a little magic right there, this is why I like loop. I can click on the little loop ribbon here, and I can press the up arrow, and now it just advances. It was 2 bars, it just goes to the next 2 bars. That's going to become very handy when we start slicing up the track. So now let's set our length to 1. We just need to loop 1 bar worth of click. We don't need a 2-bar click. And then I'm going to make this an 8-bar section. So here where it says follow action, that's why we duplicated, so we still have our down arrow to go next. 8, enter. And now we will, when we press play here, and I'll show you this in a moment, it'll start with the click count off at the top, and then it will move down automatically at the end of the 2-bar count after doing that to this first scene. So I'm going to label these real quick. This will be our count off, so I can go Apple R, Command R, count off, and then this will be our intro. And now we're starting to talk about the theory behind this. I do like to give myself a frame of reference as I'm looking at this, how many bars this intro is. And you'll see as we slice and dice the song here in the next video why this is and how that works. So intro, and I usually use brackets because it doesn't break anything. So bracket or brace 8, and then close bracket or close brace. Enter, and then I'll do the same thing over here. So I'll call this count off. You could make sure, you could mark that that's a 2-bar count off if that's important to you. And then I'm again using Command R, intro 8, or it's actually easier for me. I'll just go click 8, and then I'll know that that's an 8-bar click that I can just easily copy and paste elsewhere. I'm sure this song probably has multiple 8-bar sections, so that's kind of a shortcut for going in and then doing the rest of the mapping. So let's hear that. I'll hit count off.
1, 2. 1, 2, ready, play.
And see how it advanced into our click track. And it's just going to loop that 8 times, and then since we don't have anything else going on here, it's going to jump back to the count off, which we will fix right now.
1, 2. 1, 2.
So that's how to set up your click track in Ableton Live. We haven't saved anything yet. You might want to do that just in case. But the next thing we will do is map out our song from here on out using Ableton's ability to do that. And you'll notice we still haven't set the correct tempo for the song. That's okay. Not the end of the world. We'll do that in the next video. Thanks for watching.